boldly engaging the mindless propaganda of our time, apparently with reason. This is Rage of the Age.
This is Rage of the Age, and we have with us today a marketer, performance artist, an author, and a controversialist. He is a part owner of the coinbitapp.com. I want to introduce to you today Hotep Jesus. Hotep, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Coinbitapp.com. Yep.
You're known as Hotep Jesus, but your other name is Bryan Sharpe, which I'm a Sharpe. You had an E to yours, though. Don't know why. I don't know which one's correct. I have a bias about that, of course. But Hotep Jesus, I understand you got that name through Twitter, kind of applied to you, and you just adopted it. But for those who are not in the know of that slang, what does that name imply?
Well, yeah, I had gone through a spiritual awakening, and people were already calling me Hotep. In the Black community, it became a pejorative to call somebody Hotep. And we embraced it. And then, because I had gone through this, spiritual inner renaissance, personal renaissance, so to speak, somebody called me. They said, "What do you think you are? Some sort of Hotep Jesus?" Mm-hmm. And I was like, I kind of like the ring of that. So here I am.
It is catchy, but why is it derogative to call someone Hotep?
It's, first of all, Hotep's not a noun. It means to be at peace, to be at rest, satisfaction. Gotcha. It's more of an adjective. You can't call a person a Hotep. So that's what the feminists did. That's just not how you're supposed to use the term. It's an ancient Metal Netter term, okay. Ancient language. And, it's just not how the term's supposed to be used,
So it's an insult to be at peace.
Exactly. That's what made the whole thing stupid, for them to take something that was sacred and good and turn it into bad.
And so I guess you just adopted that as okay, I'll walk with it and move along in your steps or whatnot. So so the name Hotep Jesus obviously has stuck, and I see that you have blogs with that on there. There's places where you have your videos and things like that. Most of the people you speak with address you as Hotep Jesus, so I think it's stuck pretty well. What do you think?
Yeah, having the name Jesus tied to you can offend some people. Mm-hmm. For the most part, it usually jolts somebody's consciousness and it makes them pay attention. For the people that are offended, I think it's usually because they're pretentious and they believe that they have a monopoly on the name Jesus. The name Jesus does not have to equate to the deity or the prophet or the Son of God. It does not have to be that. If you go to South America, there's a bunch of Jesuses. They just pronounce it different. They pronounce it Jesus.
Right. That's right. That's right.
And if they know anything about the name Jesus, they would know that the man's name wasn't even Jesus. His name was Yahweh. Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh in Hebrew is how you spell it. But Jesus is also Joseph. That's why his father's name was Joseph. But those names are synonymous as you come down through the ages. It's just almost like William and Bill, right?
Right.
Like Bill is synonymous with William. Jesus is synonymous with Joseph. It's the same exact thing. But again, these people lack education. I'm somebody who has spent a considerable amount of time studying the life of Jesus and trying to understand his story and trying to understand it from a very historical perspective. Also, when you deal with the name Jesus, you're also dealing with the Tetragrammaton. And of course, in the Hebrew world, and each letter stands for a number. So when you go and look at the mathematical meaning behind Jesus, you'll find some interesting things there. But again, this comes back to the fact that people think they have a monopoly over these names. And no, you do not have a monopoly over these names. But also knowing that what that does to people's mind, having the name Jesus, what it does in people's mind, puts a lot of responsibility on one's shoulders, which I have embraced and am glad to take on that responsibility and do my best to live up to that name.
Well, I imagine maybe some of the offense would be the presumption that one is calling themselves Jesus as if they are Jesus. Maybe there's a realm to that.
Yeah, exactly.
And I mean, the offense is how dare you call yourself, Jesus, like you're actually trying to be the person, or like you're claiming to be the person. That might be part of the I don't know, misunderstanding, I guess. But it's a name that was given to you. You didn't pick it. You kind of walked in it. Right?
Yeah, it's an exonym. Yeah, it's an exonym nom de guerre.
Yeah, nom de guerre. I was going to say that's probably more applicable to the situation.
Yeah.
With that, I guess what I really want to talk to you today mostly about is just racial relations in this nation and just where it's at right now. And I've read some of your things and seen many of your videos. I'll just put it this way. I've been inundated with a sudden surprise of a great number of Black men and women going contrary to the, I'll say, prescribed manner in which we discuss racism, which in honesty is a surprise to me. I didn't know that there were so many Black people upset with the way it's being presented, because it seems to be the official version that everyone goes along with. Not that I'm for it or anything, but just I've been surprised to run into numerous. It's almost like recent. I don't. Maybe it was a suppressed thing for a while, and I think social media has perhaps opened it up a little more.
Mm-hmm.
But this is a very fascinating thing to me. So this isn't a one view on how this is to be taken. There's quite a bit of takes on this.
Oh, absolutely. What you never told me what the common view is and what the contrary.
Well, the white man is oppressing everyone, and the Blacks can't get ahead unless there's this government intervention, and they're almost incapable of doing things for themselves. That without some outside force helping them to do it, and that there's a racist behind every tree. We're out to get everyone, sort of thing, and then of course that creates a tension between how maybe how we publicly interact with each other. Perhaps,
yeah.
Are you following what I'm saying there?
Well, there is some element of truth there as far as racism is concerned. I mean, when we're talking about how Europe has conquered and balkanized the world, particularly Spain and what they did to the Caribbean, French, what they've done to the Caribbean, what the Spanish have done to South America, what the English have done to North America and the French, Canada. There were some definitely acts of terrorism against Native populations. And I believe they not only set back Black people, but the world as a whole. Their invasions of Africa, when we talk about like King Leopold of Belgium, gruesome acts of the Ma'afa or in the Ma'afa. So there is some truth there. The part where we disagree is where we need some sort of outside help, right? There's a lot of people who have this victim mentality that, we can't do better for ourselves. And I just totally don't agree with that. I think it's absolutely possible. We saw the Japanese do it when they were in internment camps here. We watched the Irish pull themselves out because Irish at one point weren't considered white. We watched the Italians do it. They weren't considered white. So I don't see how we're any different. In fact, the highest earning individual in America is the Jew. And then below the Jew is a single Nigerian male. And it's just quite funny that, they say that their system of white supremacy and oppression, but yet somebody can come from a foreign nation and do quite well here. And they say, well, that's their best of the best. And I'm like, so basically what you're saying is, if you're great, then racism won't affect you. So then all you have to do is just be great. So I fully believe that racism exists and is a hurdle, but it's nothing more than a hurdle. Hurdles you just jump over and you keep running.
Right.
I've personally dealt with a ton of racism in my youth and beyond. I'm dealing with racism now. We're talking about Democrats and liberals. You have blackballed. They have essentially blackballed me from their media, them and the black liberals. It's like if you're black and you think a certain way, you're not allowed. And I've dealt with a lot of that growing up, where I've always been an alternative thinker, and I spent a lot of time being ostracized by the greater group because I refused to think like the group. I always saw another way and refused to compromise my beliefs, refused to gel and become like the rest. And white liberals don't like that. They want you to go along with the program. They want you to amalgamate, compromise who you are. And I just refuse to do that.
It appears, at least to me, that there's a bit of racism in, I guess, the elite white liberals, if you will, of how black people are supposed to think, how Hispanics are supposed to think, and so on, and how you're even supposed to vote, and the issues that you're supposed to care about. It's almost like, well, did you ask anybody?
Yeah, you're not allowed to think for yourself. They have prescribed an ideology, a school of thought for you, and that's the one you're supposed to follow. And if you deviate from that, then you have to live on the outskirts of society. They won't hire you. They'll get you fired from your job. They'll lambast you on media, social media. It's pretty disgusting.
I just want to talk mainly about the race relations and how we relate to one another. And I guess one of the concepts I was trying to emphasize, which I think you clarified more, was this idea that it is impossible for certain groups to succeed in this nation because it's just so oppressive. And I'm not seeing it. I'm confused as to where they get this idea from. I don't think you see it because you've mentioned these other, the Jews, the Nigerian, and there's probably all kinds of others who you can succeed here if you just work through it and do it.
Yeah, I think the hardest thing for all Americans is to deal with the socialism of America. And that's really what creates a barrier for Black people or poor people or even the middle class. It's this barrier of communism. This barrier of communism has put shackles on cryptocurrency. Right now, we have the U.S. Treasury trying to pass legislation to dox Bitcoin wallets of over $10,000. But this system of communism is really strangling freedom, and it has for a really long time. For example, when we talk about the history of minimum wage, Walter E. Williams has a great book about South Africa and how the whites in South Africa had to compete with Africans, Black Africans, for jobs. And the Black Africans would compete on price, just like they would here in America.
Right.
And they would cut the picket lines. So what they did was they thought of the idea of minimum wage. So, today we have white Democrats who push that idea of minimum wage on the Black people. And these Black people have no idea the history of minimum wage is to actually price you out of the market. And that's what they did. They priced Black people out of the market. So then people were more likely to hire a white person for these jobs since nobody can compete in price. Today, when we talk about minimum wage doesn't hurt big business. Big business will just innovate and find a different way. Maybe they'll outsource to India or a foreign nation, or they'll automate and bring in machines and bots,
Right.
software to replace you and do your job. It's the little guy. It's the black guy. It's the middle class. It's the lower class of all races and nations that minimum wage hurts, because it's the small business who says, I need help to scale this business up. I'd like to hire this individual, yet I can't afford to pay them $15 an hour. My business isn't at that level where I can afford to pay someone $15 an hour.
Right.
And I have a willing and able individual here who wouldn't mind taking $5 an hour. They just want enough to buy lunch and maybe gas. And people will say, well, that's not a livable wage. Well, we're not talking about creating a livable wage yet. What we're talking about is creating an individual who has the skill set to go earn a livable wage so they can earn the skills to apply for a job, which will get them, a nice salary, 50, 60,000, 70,000 or better, because they have these skills. You see a lot of people coming out of college these days who can't get a job because they have the degree and none of the skills.
Right.
You see youth unemployment is at an all-time high.
Yes.
For this exact reason. The communists and the socialists have created barriers in the job place. It is experience that affords you better pay, not price controls. And the white liberal and the progressive, what they've realized is that you can hide socialism from nearly anyone as long as you don't call it socialism and you call it liberalism or progressivism. And so you'll have some who will say, I'm a democratic socialist like Bernie Sanders. And then you'll have someone who's a progressive or a liberal who will pass pretty much the same type of policies or advocate for the same type of policies that'll simply just destroy a nation. And they choke out free market capitalism. And that's really the big problem. You'll have, for example, when we talk about racism, and the tech world has come out and said, hey, black people are underrepresented in the job place here. Why is that? And I know people, well-qualified people who work for Intel that left Intel and said, I left Intel just because I got tired of dealing with the racism. Now, we know that conservatives are mostly the blue collar working class of America, and the liberals are the white collar working class of America, for the most part. And the white liberals are the one running these tech companies. We see it. We know that. So if black people aren't being hired, who's the one not hiring them? I'm sure black people are working quite well in the blue collar jobs under the white conservative. But when we go to these white collar jobs in the tech world and they're not hiring black people and they're not hiring women, well, who's the one being racist and sexist? Obviously, it must be the white liberal if it's your world that you run. And people aren't being hired. So it's quite funny to see them come out and say, oh, we need more diversity and whatnot. Yeah, you need more diversity.
Well, that's something that's always baffled me is to receive these lectures, if you will, from people who have the power to do something about it.
Exactly.
I mean, like you own the corporations and you're telling me corporations need to do this, that, and the other. Well, if you own it, do it. Well, why are you telling me if I have a choice in the matter?
Exactly. It absolutely makes no sense. But again, that's what the socialist is has become a master of, is blaming others for that which they are guilty of. For example, you have rules where you can't do hair in your house. Or you need a license to do hair. Well, how is a white person supposed to tell a black person how to do their hair? White people don't know about our hair and how our hair is supposed to be managed and groomed. So who are you to tell me what license I need to do hair? And then again, this is just more barriers. I know I saw a woman who was fined and arrested for collecting rainwater.
Yeah.
Right? A white woman. This is the destruction of this is the power of the socialists that
It amazes me like what you can be a criminal for now.
Yeah.
What are you in for? I was collecting rainwater, and then everybody moves to the other side of the cell. Like
Yeah.
oh, that's criminal. Horrible.
Yeah.
It's insane.
I just don't see, when I think about oppression, the white conservative doesn't come to mind.
Right.
When I think about oppression, the white liberal comes to mind because I've never had to apply for a job with a white conservative, and every interaction I've had with a white conservative in the real world may not have been pleasant, but it damn sure wasn't oppressive.
Sure.
Whereas the white liberal, the white conservative I prefer because although sometimes they may be racist, at least they believe I'm fully and able and capable of doing for myself. Whereas a white liberal looks at me as I'm not capable and I'm handicapped. So, which one is truly racist? Is it the one who believes I can do for myself, or is it the one who believes I'm handicapped and I'm stupid? I mean, when we go look at the history of racism, one of the first things that the European tried to do was create all sorts of science experiments to prove that black people were stupid.
Right.
They measured our skulls and all this type of stuff, right?
Yeah.
So that's pretty much what the white liberal today is practicing. They're studying us and saying, oh, this person is not smart enough to get into Harvard, so we have to remove some of these qualifications to get into Harvard, and all these types of things. So it's just a continuation of their racism, and people just don't see it.
It seems to me that this obsession with race tends to create racism a bit more than it, I don't know, puts it aside or something.
Yeah, I believe so. I absolutely believe so. And I think that's the problem with the racist conversation or the race conversation,
Right.
is the fact that it's pushed on us so much. I believe that people should have the freedom to associate how they want. And much of racism has been because of forcing people into other people's spaces.
Right.
And again, this is the white liberal, the socialist. For example, when we look at one of the greatest cases, most famous cases of integration, we got to look at the Brown versus the Board of Education.
Mm-hmm.
And look at Brown versus Board of Education. Right inside the bill, it says they want to change the Negro culturally. Right. So you basically don't want us to be so-called black anymore. You want us to essentially be like you.
Right.
And that's really what this was about amalgamating us into the society and assimilation.
Mm-hmm.
It never really was about making us sovereign, right? Which is what every individual wants, is to be sovereign. Well, I wouldn't say every individual. Some people love being slaves. But that's what we asked for, is to be sovereign, to have our own, to be left alone. But W. Du Bois and the rest of the white liberals had another path for us, and that was to assimilate us. And many of us didn't want that. We just wanted to be left alone. I was actually, controversial thought. I was actually a fan of Jim Crow. Under Jim Crow, we were doing a lot better than we are now. It was a lot of more unity. We had our own culture. We had our own businesses. Black business has completely tanked since integration, since the end of Jim Crow. I think Jim Crow I think that if white people want to have a white establishment and they don't want black people in there, I think they have every right to. And if black people want to have a space and they say no white people allowed, I think they have every right to. It's called freedom of association. And then when you force people in these spaces, you cause racial strife. When you go to China, they got Chinese only places where if you ain't Chinese, you ain't allowed in. Right? You don't see the white liberal trying to bring democracy to China.
No.
But if you were to do that in one of these other weaker nations, they'd say, oh, you have Spanish only? Well, we have to do something about that. You don't see them doing anything in the DR where if you're a black person caught on the other side of the border from Haiti and DR, shoot, it's dangerous to be caught on the other side of the border if you're not an American. You could be killed. You could definitely be arrested. but we don't see any civil rights leaders trying to do anything about that. And I just find that funny. And that's because the white liberals already created negotiations and control over that island.
Right. I know when I was in Korea, I've witnessed similar things where there were certain establishments that were for Koreans only. That I couldn't. They would not let. They would have, I guess, guards at the door. And when they saw me and others like me coming, they'd be like, "No, you can't come in here." Right?
Yeah.
And that's just, I'm like, okay, whatever. Move on to the next place, and that was it.
You're listening to Rage of the Age. Rage of the Age. Politics, religion, economics, and history with a conservative bend.
It's an interesting thing that you said, and I can imagine that will probably bring a reaction to the things you said. I don't think you're for the hatred of Jim Crow of human beings, but you're saying that during those times, the Black people would take care of themselves. They would build businesses. They would build these.
Yeah, I love Jim Crow because it forced us to be independent.
Right, to be independent, not to be dependent upon a government system, handouts from white liberals or whatever it is.
Lyndon Baines Johnson, FDR, yeah,
right. Because it would have been great to maybe abolish the Jim Crow display of hatred, but it was replaced with, you can't get on your own. Here, let us help you. And it's been that way ever since, it seems.
It's funny. They say that they've accomplished integration, yet we still have black and white schools.
Right. Well, yeah. You're right. And I thought about that not long ago. It's like, because people just move.
Yeah.
Yeah. And just, you can't make them live in a house and, and I notice like people don't hardly ride the buses anymore. Parents drive their kids to school. They'll literally wait in lines to take their kids to school and not ride the bus. And it's, it's a waste, man. But I remember working as a kid, and that was normal back in my day. For children to go to work, that was normal. Yeah. It was almost expected, and it was no problem for me to go wherever, grocery store, whatever, be a bag boy, whatever it is, and do it. And nowadays, man, like I have children. Trying to find them jobs is almost impossible. Nobody will hire them, and part of the reason is what you said. There's so much legislation and possible litigation and cost just to hire that kid.
It's not even worth it.
And like you said, by the time they leave college, they haven't really done any job. And it's not necessarily their fault. It's just there's no the culture's like, don't work until much later, and we'll just throw you into management, which never happens because they don't know what they're doing.
Yeah, I'm a college dropout. I'm a community college dropout, right?
Oh my!
And and I worked for a startup incubator that had a celebrity endorser, 50 Cent. And at this incubator, I was surrounded by Yale, Harvard, and Princeton graduates. Like everybody came from Ivy League. Yeah. And I've never seen a more incapable group of people in my life.
Oh my!
I was shocked and I was appalled because when I got there, and you get to know people, and it's just like, oh, you went to Princeton, you went to Harvard, you went there, and it's like, wow, like really brilliant individuals. But when the C-level execs left the office, what happened? They came and asked me for help on their project. They came and asked me, hey, I need help on this project. Me, the college dropout. Why? Because I had built businesses before. This wasn't my first rodeo. I remember when they asked for a social media strategy at that time, I had already 50,000 followers accumulated on Twitter. And these people it was funny because at one point they were trying to tell me how to work Twitter. The white liberal was telling me how to operate Twitter. And and this is moments after they first created their Twitter account.
Yes.
And
like they just made one. And
they just made one. And now this white liberal wants to tell me how this thing should be done. And I just
my
found that like shocking, like, wow, you're really going to sit here and tell me how to do this? And I showed you the platform and told you why we should be here. I got this job because of my Twitter, because of my blog that was doing millions of hits a month. And then you're going to tell me, like, for example, they were saying, hey, where should we put this blog? And I said, put it on WordPress. And they're like, but Tumblr is so popular right now. Should we do Tumblr? I'm like, nah, don't do Tumblr. Do WordPress. But, Tumblr was starting to blow up at that time.
Right.
Well, you look back now, WordPress, almost the entire internet is run on WordPress, right? Or some sort of CMS. And Tumblr's like tanking, right?
Yeah.
But the white liberal, again, was like, oh, this black guy doesn't know what he's talking about. Meanwhile, again, I have a WordPress blog that's doing millions of hits a month. And this is the stuff I've had to deal with the white liberal my entire life, man. It's just like, you can prove that you know something, and yet because they're white and went to this Ivy League college, they have this elite idea of themselves.
Yes. Well, do you believe then that in your experience, you've dealt with more display of racism from white liberals than from conservatives?
Different types of racism.
Types of racism?
Yeah. So, for example, the racism of a white liberal is way more powerful. The racism of a conservative is more fleeting. For example, if I do this experiment every single year, right? If I say, hey, I'm celebrating Kwanzaa this year, the white liberal will say, hey, congratulations, celebrate Kwanzaa. Do you? The white conservative goes, oh my God, that's not a real holiday, right? You see it every year with Mark Dice and Ann Coulter, right? And Ann Coulter follows me. That's my homegirl. But for some reason, she has a problem with it because of Malenga and FBI and him being, accused of crimes that we are not sure that he's guilty of.
Right.
So, they're upset at the holiday I share. Now, if you celebrated Festivus or Yule or whatever, I tell you, happy holidays. Do you? The other thing is, we discuss reparations. If I bring up reparations, the white conservative cringes, and it's just like, first of all, this is none of your business. You, the white conservative, you don't even have enough money to pay reparations. You can't afford to pay us reparations. Right? So obviously the battle isn't with you, but again, they completely contradict themselves because they'll say, you weren't a slave and you weren't around during Jim Crow and all this other stuff and blah, 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 blah. And I can make arguments to show that, well, things did happen that trickled down and have affected us through the ages. But here's the big kicker. The white conservative would tell you all day long about how the Democrats have destroyed the black community. So you just literally gave me an argument as to why I deserve reparations, because the Democrats have destroyed our community. So I did this thought experiment where I said, hey, Dems must pay. And all of a sudden I got conservatives. And the conservatives was like, wait, now I'm on reparations. Right? And then I made another argument. I said, well, first of all, if we get reparations, I don't want it in the form of fiat notes, aka counterfeit money. I don't want that. I want tax exemption, right? And then they were like, oh, in that case, then sure, because eventually we can make a case for tax exemption ourselves. And I said, see, now we get tax exemption for all citizens of the United States of America. Isn't that good? So then the white conservatives like, when you put it that way, I like it. But again, right? But and it seems like I'm the only one that has been able to do this, right?
Yeah.
But it just goes to show you how people who are pro reparations haven't been thinking about the arguments against reparations, and the people that are against reparations haven't been open to thinking of how to make reparations work. And here there's one guy comes along who they call Hotep Jesus, who's able to make both sides happy, right? And that's the thing. It's like we have to drop some of these intellectual barriers. Now, the white liberal, on the other hand, they have the power to utterly destroy your community. Right. They have the power to destroy the mind of your youth through their educational systems.
Right.
You know, they have the power to not hire you. They have the power to not educate you. I remember I was talking to somebody who I went to high school with recently, and we remember when athletes, the white kids at our school, would have their highlight tapes sent off to the elite colleges, and the black kids wouldn't have any tapes. You had to kind of put that together yourself.
Right.
This is a very white liberal town we grew up in, you know? So the white liberal has more control over your future than the white conservative. The most you might get out of a white conservative is to call you the N-word. Well, I'd much rather deal with somebody call me the N-word than somebody who can destroy my life or stop me from climbing the ranks of classism.
That's definitely a big problem I see is any discussion. There's no intellectual discussion at all. There's no consideration for what is that person saying or asking for. Why do they object? Why are they for that? And I don't know. I think it'd be a little bit more peaceful if we started there. Why do they think what they think? You know, instead of just dismissing it out of hand and going for the throat, it's crazy.
Yeah. But again, like I said, you know, all peoples are capable of racism at some level.
Oh, yeah.
It's just a question of what type of racism. You know, some people say black people can't be racist, and white people say, white conservatives especially say black people can be racist. And technically, they're both right, because it depends on what definition of racism you consider. You know, are you saying that hating somebody because of your skin color is racism? Or are you saying that stopping the upward mobilization of someone is racism? All right. So the white liberal will say stopping the upward mobilization of a person is racism. And sometimes they'll say calling somebody the N-word is racism. So they'll use both definitions. But the main one they're talking about is black people don't have the power to stop the upward mobilization of a white person, which is technically true, right? So if you're using that as your definition of racism, then sure, yeah, black people can't be racist. But it depends on what definition we're using here. And people like to substitute whatever definition pleases them at the time.
That's true. Yeah, because to me, the technical purist definition, if you will, of racism is one race thinking they're superior to another. But now it's used in just the slightest prejudice for any reason can be viewed as racism. Well, now you can be called a racism just because you have a contrary opinion.
Yeah.
If I disagree with you, well, you must. If I'm of an opposite color, I must. Yeah. If I vote for Trump, I'm a racist.
Yeah.
How did that become a definition? I don't know. We can't have conversations until we know exactly what we're talking about with our terms.
Yeah, they keep moving the Overton window and the definitions of these terms. And Orwell warned us about this stuff, about how they like to play with definitions of words.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. He used to call it true speak, right? Where you change the meaning of words and you can control the way they think.
New speak, yeah. Truth speak, yeah. But that's what the white liberals are master of, is controlling language. When you control language, you control thought.
Well, they control language. They control, I guess, what they call a platform, denying you a platform, like you were talking about earlier. They don't let you speak. They don't let you be heard. It makes it look like they're the ones who own the truth, and they have the truth.
Yeah. I mean, think about a guy like me and some of the attention I've been able to garner, like being on Joe Rogan. I'm one of the most requested people for podcasts in America. And TV won't touch me.
I did see you on TV once, though, on Fox News, right? Where you went to demand a cup of coffee as reparations, right?
Yeah. Why hasn't Fox had me back yet?
I don't know, but here's what that was humorous. But what really caught my attention is you said something to the effect of, unless I act in a manner that they consider a black man should act, I'm not going to be in the mainstream news. Yeah. You said, here I did it, and voila, here I am. I acted the way you wanted me to act, and suddenly you let me have the limelight. Yeah. And I was like, that is so true. Look at that.
Yeah. The left wasn't sure. Well, the left thought I was on their side.
Right.
I was trolling through the whole video. They thought I was serious.
Yeah.
I yelled the trigger word Black Lives Matter at the end of the video, which made them think I was an ally, but I was really trolling.
Right.
And when the right realized I was trolling, that's when I made the Fox News, because previously I was just highlighted on some of these other channels like Vice and so on and so forth, and NBC. I was highlighted, but when it got out that I was trolling, then Fox News finally brought me up. But yeah, man, the lesson I was trying to teach people was, if you understand the rules of your society, you can manipulate and bend them to your will at any time. And there's a lot of people who compromise their morals to do exactly that, to climb the ranks of society. And I was showing people how easy it was to do so. It took me one thought experiment and I blew up,
Right. Yeah. Well, and I guess to me, that's what's kind of disturbing is precedence has been set for, if you act, say, and do certain things, you're going to climb. And they're not exactly constructive things. They're destructive things.
Correct. Yeah. There was nothing great about what I did in Starbucks other than the trolling part, right? And understanding how to manipulate people's perceptions of things and the demonstration of it. But outside of that, if you took me serious, there was nothing great about going into Starbucks and asking for a reparations coffee. It's just really funny, to say the least.
Well, that's what demonstrates to me the difficulty, if you will, of the discussion of racism and people's interacting in this nation and the conflict that exists. It's almost like we can't have an honest conversation. It's staged. The whole thing is you won't get recognized or the time of day unless you state it in a certain manner, which to me is divisive.
Well, that's why, like you said, you had no idea that there were Black people that existed that thought like me.
Right.
And that's because the white liberal does a great job of curating the mind of the white conservative by only presenting you one type of Black person. So when you watch the media, and thank God for social media, because if it had not been for social media, you still wouldn't know, right?
Well, exactly.
If it wasn't for social media, you still would think that we were a monolith.
Right.
But that's what the white liberal has done for ages. We've always, like, they'll depict the Martin Luther King side of things, but they won't show you the other side of the river and the different types of Black people that were like, nah, we don't want integration. That's not what we want. Right. They never showed you that opinion.
Right.
They only showed you the Martin Luther King side of things, which is what white people thought we thought like. And then today you see the same things. When you see somebody like me, you're like, wait, it seems like I'm in an anomaly, but no, there are millions of Black people who think exactly like me.
Exactly.
And the Black liberals, they call us Hoteps. We are the other side of the river. We think differently than they do. We think more empowering and less of a victim. But they hide us, right? And then and now, because of social media, they can't hide us. So when we do pop our head up and people we are noticed, they have to rush to social media to write think pieces. So when you Google us, like if you Google Hotep right now, it's just smear campaign.
I've seen that. I have absolutely seen that.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So because we were starting to become prominent, they had to get ahead of it. So when people Google it or use their search engines, people already have this preconceived notion of us, right? And that's what the white liberal has taught them to do is, destroy your opposition. Rules for Radicals, Saul Alinsky,
Right, exactly.
Destroy the argument before it even comes about.
And we spent quite a bit of time talking about the white liberal, and they're not acting alone. You've mentioned the other aspect of there's the Black liberal who's in league with them, who's at war with gentlemen like you, and it's like, I don't know, is there a reconciliation between that? do they really see you as not black, or do they see you as like contrary to the good cause, or what's
They like to say that we are the ones that are anti-black, but these people actually have never lived in close proximity with black people. These people are more culturally white.
Oh,
For example, you'll see them recite W.E.B. Du Bois often. Well, W.E.B. Du Bois was a mulatto who hadn't seen a black person until he turned like the age 20. You know, he was raised culturally white. Now, Marcus Garvey, are you familiar with Marcus Garvey?
no, sir.
Okay. So that's common. Most white people don't know who Marcus Garvey is. Well, he's a prominent leader. And I suggest everybody go out there and read this book, The Speeches and Writing of Marcus Garvey. But in this book, he details his experience with the NAACP and how destructive that organization was. I don't think it's highlighted in this copy. I have like 3 copies of it. But in this book, he talks about how W.E.B. Du Bois was running this thing called NAACP with a whole bunch of racially ambiguous, damn near passing white black people to make decisions for the greater nation. And they had him extradited. They had him arrested. They had Marcus Garvey arrested. And, Marcus Garvey was a brave black man. He sat down and had meetings with the KKK, and said, hey, what do you want? And made negotiations with them, something that was unthought of at the time, right?
I imagine, yeah. That's unthought of now.
It's unthought of now.
Yeah,
right?
even now. So,
yeah, wow. I remember a few years ago, the racist wing of alt-right popped up and people were running from them. And I was running towards them like, let's sit down and have a conversation. What is it that you want? What is it that you don't like? And I've had conversations with them, and we had a little fake alliance at one point,
A fake alliance.
Yeah, a little, sometimes you have a common enemy, right?
Right. Sure.
The white liberal. So it's like, hey, we'll put down our odds, for the because, enemy of my enemy is my friend.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, when we go and we look back through the ages, the white liberal has always been destructive, but they aren't in close proximity with black people. In fact, a lot of these people go to HBCUs to be around black people because they've never had an experience of being around black people.
So they're not for like a pilgrimage for them where they cross over and finally meet someone from the other race or something.
That's correct. That's correct.
Goodness.
Youngstown, Ohio, October 2nd, 1923, Marcus Garvey writes, the Negro must have a country and a nation of his own. That's not something that a black liberal would say, right? You won't hear him say that. An expose of the caste system among Negroes. And he says here, Du Bois represents a group that hates the Negro blood in its veins and has been working subtly to build up a caste aristocracy. This is on page 142. And you can look up this speech too. This is something written at Tombs Prison. He wrote this from prison, August 31st, 1923. Now, this goes back to what I was telling you about hiding people, right? This guy, when you're a black person in the Hotep community, Marcus Garvey. Okay. If you're a black liberal, you don't know him or you dislike him. But most white people don't know about Marcus Garvey. Right? Because you talk about, hey, I didn't know there was black people that thought different. Well, yeah, since the 20s, we had people like that. Right. But you never heard of him. You heard of Martin Luther King Jr., but you never heard of this guy because they hide these people. They hide them because they might spark thought amongst the Negro to do for himself. He wasn't playing that victim mentality. He was like, hey, what are you crying for? Right. We have great population here. We can do a lot. We can do a lot back and forth with Africa. Let's make it happen. And he built businesses that the black liberals sabotaged.
Wow. And they actually sabotaged their businesses because they didn't agree with him. Wow.
Because they wanted to assimilate, and he was not with the assimilation. Right.
Wow. That's almost like the mentality now, assimilate or we'll destroy you. Sort of thing.
Yeah, it's just a continuation of history with the black liberal. You see the white liberal is at the upper echelon of society,
right?
And he brings along this black liberal with him, who is the lapdog, and it uses him to control the rest of the black population. So they use like the Al Sharptons of the world to say, hey, this is how a Negro should act.
Right.
This is how a Negro should think. And these are the leaders that they'll put on TV, but they'll never put a Hotep Jesus on TV because I might give you an alternative way to look at these things. I might give you an alternative way to look at white conservatives. And it might actually heal race relations. You see, if we heal race relations, the white liberals out of a job.
Yeah, I know. Exactly. That's exactly it. We're threatening their line of work right now. I mean,
exactly. What is he going to raise money on if there's no more racial strife?
Right. Exactly. I don't know. It might have to actually fix communities. I don't know.
Exactly.
Yeah. Wow. You know what? Hotep Jesus, Bryan, it's been awesome having a conversation with you today about this. I have a feeling I could go on for another hour, but I understand our time is limited. But thanks for being with us today.
Thank you. Great talk.
You're listening to Rage of the Age. Rage of the Age. Politics, religion, economics, and history with a conservative bend.
I want to use this essay segment to talk about something that I think is just the beginning, and it's going to cause some interesting occurrences in the future. It's a sign of things to come, and I'm very curious, do we have the ability to forecast what this could lead to? I don't know. And the thing I'm talking about is what we discussed in the interview of Hotep Jesus about that recently in this past year, and this is true, this past year I have seen an overabundance of expression of black individuals speaking contrary to the liberal version of what a black person should be. And many of them that I have personally ran into and talked with, they are, it's like in my mind for the longest time, I'm like, where have you been? But they've been there the whole time. And the question is, why did I think that? Why have many people thought this? And when I look on social media, more and more in greater numbers, there's this voice that is constantly fighting back against the typical non-intellectual, lethargically restated political paradigms of the plight of the black man and what we have to do to fix it. And to me, it's like, this is new, but it's not new. It's not new at all. It's just this voice has literally been suppressed for a very long time. Why is that? Well, most of us are not oblivious to the fact that the big media is ran in the hands of a few editors, and they basically have a specific propaganda view of news. We are here to control thought. We are here to spin the narrative, to get ahead of the narrative, to control the narrative. That's all they are. And they've done a pretty good job of it for a very, very long time. And if you've noticed, if you've watched the news lately, I'm talking about the regular old-fashioned news, if you will. If you watch their shows, they constantly harp on how social media is basically not to be trusted. They don't say that directly, but they always talk about the ills of social media and the fake news that's out there. But they never mention where the big media sources get it wrong, because that's who they are. Everyone else obviously can't handle the news like we can handle the news. I wouldn't trust those social network things there, because they're not like us. You know what that is? It's that elitist mentality. I've been to these prestigious schools. I subscribe to these elitist philosophies. I'm obviously better than you. Just me thinking news is better news than what you can make. Therefore, my news station is better than yours. And yours is, obviously needs fact checked or something. I mean, only an elite liberal will think of something like a fact check. Seriously. Fact checks. They don't know what facts are. All they know is what can, in their mind is what can I do to control the news? What can I do to control perception? And yet they act like they're owners of the truth, which baffles me. I will contend with any other contrary opinion in an open debate and not fear it, because I want the better idea and the truth to rise. But you can't have that with a liberal. They think of ways, well, how can I shut them down? How can I poison that well? How can I make them look bad and not even talk with them? And how can I suppress their voice? What are ways that I can drown them out? And they've done that for decades, And I love social media because it eliminates editors. Though they're trying, if you've seen, they're trying to reimpose that type of control over it, where they suppress certain things. They don't like the idea that you might actually speak up and not get their permission to do it. I don't know what's worse. The idea that we have free speech and everybody thinks it exists, or the reality that it is greatly being attacked and we're just okay with it. I don't, neither's a good scenario. But basically it's like this. If for some reason my goals are lined up with this particular side and they're cheating and they're suppressing and they're destroying other people's rights of free expression, as long as it benefits me, I don't care. Not realizing that as soon as that's an acceptable way of operation, they're going to turn around and use it on them. But hey, at least for the time, I'm getting what I want. They lack foresight. They lack honesty. So you always have that gang that's going to root for it. The elites, being elite, are always going to have their roadies that hang out with them and want to be like them and will worship the ground they walk on. And you can do whatever you want, and we will support it no matter what to the end. It doesn't matter if we destroy a nation. It doesn't matter if we destroy whole communities. It doesn't matter if we suppress free press and free speech. It doesn't matter if we ruin businesses and destroy them, as long as we get what we want. I mean, if that is in essence the basic background of the leftist movements. That's their whole strategy, always has been. That's their political means. Whatever can be done by any means necessary, just do it, and then we'll fix up the mess later. That's kind of their strategical thinking in politics. It really is. But now that these voices are getting out there, though, that's something to think about. Maybe you've been like me before, where you didn't realize that you had the occasional here and there, but there's millions of black men and women, and the biggest one that comes to my mind a lot of times is Candace Owens, because she has got to be the bravest woman of our time, because she is taking the greatest slander and jabs you can possibly imagine just for her to open up her mouth and speak. And she speaks very well. She commands facts very well, and they hate her guts for it. But she's an example of what they'll do. They will try their darnest to intimidate you, and if they can't make you stop through intimidation, then they will turn on the heat and try to suppress you or characterize you in such a way to where you're repulsive to other people. If you're for doing that, my question is what are you afraid of? What are you hiding? Do you really not believe what you believe to be the truth? Are you that scared that someone might point out something that's not right? Why do you go for that? Why do you think you possess the truth when you're like that? That's what I want to know. All I know is that I pray this voice gets louder. I pray that other means are done. I hope that mainstream media just tanks. I really do. Tanks with no recourse to fix itself, because it's not free anymore. It doesn't, all it is a propaganda organs for certain organizations, and that's it. I'm sick of them. Let there be free and open social media. Let there be the free exchange of ideas. Let there be actual free speech. That's what I'm all about.
You've been listening to Rage of the Age. If you loved today's podcast, make sure to leave a review on the media you're listening through. Secure future episodes by heading over to rageoftheage.com and clicking the RSS feed button. Until next time, this has been Rage of the Age.